it's time to discuss a name that we frequently discuss on FOMO, that being Palantir, which I will say continues to gain, its enthusiasts, as we're not seeing really any pessimism from the sell side. But joining us to discuss more on this analyst note is Marley Kayden, of course, host for the Schwab Network. And so, Marley, I got ahead of myself. I got excited about Palantir, obviously, a name that is now our fourth or fifth teetering best performer in the S&P 500 so far this year. It's up now, still 133% roughly.
Yeah, it's a performer, and BofA is raising the price target because of that. They're saying their price target's now up to $215. Just for reference, Palantir trading just under $180. Their previous price target was $180, keeping that buy rating they already had after analysts got to spend some time with Akshay Krishnaswamy, who's the company's chief architect. Now, they said that they're citing stronger growth across Palantir's application for this price target increase, saying that the AI forward deployed engineers are an accelerator for the company's growth. They're also saying that Palantir is going to benefit from increased demand and these empowered engineers that, quote, can focus on the most complex problems. They also noted the improving UK business outlook in the note, BofA referencing that strategic partnership that was just announced with the Ministry of Defense as Palantir's first billion-dollar deal outside of the U.S. Now, that, of course, came after Palantir had previously removed some of its operations from Europe and said they didn't feel that AI adoption was happening fast enough in the European marketplace, and so they had pulled back on their European presence, now reigniting that European presence with this deal. Also making note of Palantir's Maven smart system. Back in April, that was selected by NATO to augment intelligence, to do target recognition and battle space awareness with NATO, and making capability decisions for warfighters. So they're saying that they believe that other countries will increasingly consider the Maven technology as a global digital battle management system, now that the U.S. is also using it. And the U.S. tends to be a standard in terms of warfare technology. So a lot of positives here in this BofA note. We know that their stock has boomed amid this sort of perception that it is a darling of the current administration and that it's favored with some of the regulations going on, as well as the administration itself. Also, retail investor enthusiasm for AI has helped lift Palantir. And, like we've talked about constantly, AI is sort of the tide that lifts all boats, to use one of Jenny's favorite phrases. And it doesn't appear to be going anywhere. They did make a note, commercial-related revenue does have yet to really ramp up for Palantir. It really is more on the federal side, on the government spending side. But they noted that they are looking at these AI initiatives to drive some commercial growth. And Palantir is also helping customers develop and deploy their own autonomous AI agents, which the analyst says could be a potential here. Also noting that they think customers will actually be more attracted to just buy Palantir's operating system versus building its own as an efficiency play. So a lot of potential upside BofA is citing here, but just such an interesting company to watch as it grows at such an exponential rate.
I'm going to give this company the best compliment, and I'm not even kidding. This company reminds me so much of the ascent of Tesla. Dynamic, maybe controversial leader, new technology that seemingly, is changing the world in some ways. Analysts, investors, institutional, retail alike cannot agree on this stock at all. You look at the breakdown of analyst coverage, 55% going down the middle saying hold. There's still about 10-15% who are never going to let the valuation discussion go, despite the fact that you have companies like Tesla that have proven you can be expensive for a really, really long time. And then the 31%, maybe we'll put a Dan Ives in that camp, where it's like they can't do anything wrong. They're going to be, beloved forever. And quite frankly, Dan has picked a good bunch of stocks throughout his coverage, Palantir being one of them, to have that kind of opinion. And I look at this and say, this is sort of a bet against it, or, decide not to participate in this one at your own peril. And at some point, there's like this tipping point. And it happened with Tesla, where it was like, it became must own. And I don't know that Palantir is there yet, but if it isn't, it's really, really close. And at some point, valuation no longer matters.
It's interesting you bring up Dan Ives. We had a guest, Charles Moon, on Trading 360 earlier, and Dan Ives put out a note on a different company, but he said when Dan Ives speaks, the market listens. And there is truth to that, and he has long been a supporter of Palantir and its rise. But, like you said, drawing, a comparison to Tesla, when is that tipping point that it becomes a must-hold stock? When will there be more consensus on this one? They just had their first $1 billion in revenue quarter, and they're doing the growth that they need to justify the bull case. But it's just such a fascinating company because there are so many different avenues to focus on that could become, and much like Tesla, which one is going to be the primary driver?
I love this too, because you said something too about, hey, at some point these companies just crumple it up and throw their plans in the trash and just capitulate and subscribe to whatever the platform is. Kind of happened with Tesla when you think about the charging network. Didn't every single company just adopt Tesla's charging standard, and that became the standard? So look, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, that's all very different than what Palantir is working on. But I think the comparison is fair. This is a company that is shaping the direction of machine learning and artificial intelligence software, much like Tesla did in its own space, much like SpaceX is in its space. And I don't know how you value that because it's worth a lot.
It is. And that's always the skepticism from the street, is that this name trades at a lofty valuation. I mean, it surged 23,000% over just the last 3 years. I mean, outperforming NVIDIA, outperforming pretty much anything. The momentum hasn't really stalled. I know we're modestly lower today, but I mean, to the skeptics that have been basically making these calls like stay on the sidelines, they have, just blatantly been wrong.
And it's hard to argue. You look at the chart. As you look at the chart, it's climbing a very steep mountain with a couple dip-offs here and there. But, if you're looking at the long-term chart, the 5-year chart, they've just had this meteoric rise. I mean, year-to-date up 137%. On the year itself, 373% up. I mean, it's hard to argue against anyone not making a bull case here because there hasn't appeared to have been any arguments that say what is going to stand in the way. Everything right now is a tailwind.
Yeah, and actually, I love the comparison to Tesla. I even link them, not to get crazy, to NVIDIA because of the exposure to AI and the way they already have, consistency as far as contracts, which is a huge win, not really delivering as much of a product as much as securing enterprise accounts and government contracts. I mean, all of right now, the environment has bode well, pretty much safely to say, for Palantir.